Hi, crime enthusiasts. This is your host Ashita, and today I'm sharing the case of Cierra Chapman, who vanished from Trotwood, Ohio, under mysterious circumstances. Sierra was last seen on December 27th when she visited her ex boyfriend's apartment on Autumn Woods Drive to drop off some personal belongings. At 4:30 a.m., her silver 2014 Cadillac SRX was spotted leaving the area. Her sister reported her missing on 29 December after repeated calls to Sierra went unanswered, something completely out of character for her. No matter what time of the day, Sierra would always pick up or at least return a call. She was never seen or heard from again. Investigators have described her disappearance as an orchestrated event and a very well planned incident, raising serious concerns about what really happened to Sierra that night. Cierra Chapman lived with her sister Letitia Lofton in Dayton. She also had a 15-year-old son. Sierra is described as very family oriented and she frequently spent time and vacationed with her family. She loved working on cars and she loved her pets, which included a cat. On December 27, 2022, 30-year-old Sierra Chapman was last seen when she went to her ex boyfriend's apartment on Autumn Woods Drive in Trotwood, Ohio, to drop off some personal belongings. The two had recently broken up, and while it's unclear what their final interaction was like, this visit would mark the last time Sierra was ever seen. Security footage later captured her silver 2014 Cadillac SRX leaving the area at 4:30 a.m. But here's where things take a sinister turn. There is no confirmation that Sierra was the one driving. That was the last trace of her. Her sister Letitia quickly grew concerned when her repeated calls to Sierra went unanswered. This was entirely out of character. Sierra would always answer her phone no matter the time, and if she ever missed a call, she would always call back. She was never the type to disappear without telling anyone. Sensing something was terribly wrong, Letitia attempted to report Sierra missing that same day, but authorities told her she needed to wait 2 days before filing an official report. It was only on December 29th, 2 days later, that Sierra was formally reported missing. Those last hours, possibly even minutes, could have been crucial in the search for her. Days passed with no sign of Sierra. No calls, no texts, no activity on her social media. Then on January 6, 2023, a disturbing discovery was made. Sierra's Cadillac SRX was found abandoned on Jewel Avenue in Middleton, a location 20 miles away from Trotwood. Inside, investigators found her purse and other belongings, but there was no trace of Sierra herself. Authorities immediately noted how strange this was. Sierra had no reason to be in Middletown. She didn't live there, she had no connections to the area, and no one could explain why her vehicle had ended up there. If Sierra hadn't driven herself, who had? Investigators thoroughly searched the vehicle, but initially they found no obvious signs of foul play. There was no evidence to explain what happened to Sierra. No blood, no damage, nothing immediately alarming. However, they later decided to take the car in further forensic processing, hoping to uncover hidden clues that could point to what happened that night. In the meantime, police turned to the local community, urging residents of Jewel Avenue, Shelley Street, and Titus Avenue in Middleton, as well as drivers along State Route 4, to check their security cameras for any sign of Sierra's car between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. on December 27. They were looking for any lead, any clue, any sighting that could help piece together Sierra's movements in those crucial early morning hours. Naturally, investigators wanted to speak to the last person to see Sierra alive, her ex boyfriend. While he did answer some questions over the phone, authorities requested that he come to the station for a formal interview to properly go over the details of that night. But here's the chilling part. As of July 2023, a full 6 months after Sierra went missing, he had still not compiled. The police confirmed that, despite their requests, he had not come in for questioning. Why? What was he avoiding? And why? If he had nothing to hide, wouldn't he cooperate with the investigation? As investigators worked to piece together the timeline of Sierra's disappearance, they grew more certain of one thing. This was not a random case. This was not a woman who wandered off on her own or simply left town without telling anyone. Instead, they described Sierra's disappearance as an orchestrated event and a very well planned incident. Someone had taken careful steps to make sure she was never found. Someone had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks. But who and why? What really happened to Cierra Chapman on the night of December 27? Who was driving her car when it left her ex-boyfriend's apartment? Why did it end up abandoned in a place where she had no known ties? What was missing from the vehicle that authorities haven't revealed? And perhaps the most important question of all, why has her ex-boyfriend refused to meet with the police? Months have passed and the search for Cierra Chapman continues. Her family and investigators refuse to give up. But until the truth is uncovered, one thing remains certain. Someone out there knows exactly what happened to Sierra that night. The disappearance of Cierra Chapman has left her family in unimaginable pain, grappling with the unknown as the days, weeks, and now months continue to pass without answers. Among those feeling the weight of this nightmare is Regina Chapman, Sierra's aunt, who has spoken about the deep emotional toll the case has taken on their family. It's been very rough, she admitted, describing the pain of waking up each day with no clarity about what happened to Sierra. Trying to keep that alive is hard for us, not knowing what is going on, what's happening to her, she said. The uncertainty, the fear, and the desperation for answers have made this ordeal almost unbearable. Every day that goes by without new developments is another day of torment, another day where Sierra's whereabouts remain a mystery. Letitia described her sister a real fighter, emphasizing that if anything had happened to Sierra, she wouldn't go out without a fight. She also spoke about Sierra's vibrant personality, saying she was the life of the party, and that when she's around, there's joy, there's fun. Sierra's mother, Kelly Van, described her daughter as a kind and caring person with a generous heart. Sierra would give her life and her right arm to anybody she could help, she said, highlighting her daughter's selflessness and unwavering compassion. Despite the heartache, Sierra's family has refused to give up. They have fought tirelessly to keep her story in the public eye, to ensure that law enforcement remains committed to the investigation and do everything in their power to bring her home, one way or another. The determination has led to multiple large scale searches, bringing together law enforcement, non-profit organizations, and volunteers, all working toward the same goal: finding Sierra. One of the most significant search efforts has included the assistance of Texas EQ Search, a well respected search and recovery team specializing in missing persons cases. They have worked alongside the Dayton Police Department and the Doc Ellis Foundation, an organization that has been standing by Sierra's family from the beginning, offering support in any way they can. The collaborative effort has brought in dozens of volunteers, law enforcement officers, and search professionals, all hoping to uncover any clue that could lead to Sierra's whereabouts. The search efforts have been nothing short of extensive. According to Cincinnati based EcoSearch Midwest Director Dave Reda, a search coordinator, the team was equipped with highly specialized resources, including customized drones, ATVs, cadaver dogs, which were bussed in all the way from Detroit to aid in the mission. The scale of the operation reflected the seriousness of Sierra's case and the commitment from those involved to leave no stone unturned. We are going to cover as many areas as possible that make the most sense, Reader explained, emphasizing that every effort was being made to follow credible leads and search locations connected to the investigation. But as time passed on and the searches continued, the reality of the situation became more difficult to ignore. For many missing person cases, the first 48 hours are the most critical in determining whether someone will be found alive. As days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, the fear of what investigators might find or not find became overwhelming. Hope is a powerful thing, but so is uncertainty. You always want to keep hope that she is still alive, Rita said. That's always the hope. And when you don't find them, you start thinking, is there a possibility? But what if we come up empty handed? At least we'll know where she is not. This statement alone underscores the heart wrenching reality of missing persons cases. Families want nothing more than to find their loved ones alive and well, to reunite with them and bring them home safely. But the longer someone remains missing, the harder it becomes to ignore the possibility of a tragic outcome. Every search that turns up nothing leaves them with more questions than answers, forcing them to live in a space between hope and despair, where each day is filled with the pain of the unknown. It's hard to be not a little suspicious of Sierra's ex boyfriend. After all, she was last seen going to his apartment, a fact that places him directly at the center of this mystery. And if you're familiar with true crime cases, you know just how common it is for women to disappear or to be murdered shortly after ending a relationship. Statistically, the most dangerous time for a woman in an abusive or controlling relationship is right after she leaves. The number of cases involving intimate partner violence that escalate into something deadly is staggering. So naturally, people are going to look at the last person who saw her, her ex. That being said, there is no concrete evidence, at least none that's been made public, that directly ties him to Sierra's disappearance. There has been no arrest, no official suspect named, and no clear indication of foul play inside his apartment. But still, there are things about his behavior that don't sit right. For example, the fact that he never came in for a formal police interview despite investigators requesting it. That alone is odd. Wouldn't someone who truly had nothing to hide want to cooperate? Wouldn't they want to help find their missing ex girlfriend, even if just to clear their own name? It's not as if he couldn't find the time. Months have passed. A full 6 months had gone by when police confirmed it in July that he still hadn't come in. That's plenty of time to set aside on an afternoon to answer a few questions. Even if he wasn't involved, why wouldn't he want to do everything possible to help bring closure to Sierra's family? The refusal to cooperate fully is the kind of thing that raises eyebrows. Another frustrating aspect of this case is that we don't know much about their relationship. How long were they together? Were there any warning signs? Was their breakup amicable or hostile? Had Sierra ever expressed fear or concerns about him to friends or family? None of this information has been publicly released, making it hard to speculate about what may have appeared behind closed doors. The unanswered questions in Cierra Chapman's case are piling up, and they make this whole situation even more baffling. First, let's address the most glaring questions. What happened when Sierra's car left the apartment at 4:30 a.m.? There are only two possibilities. Sierra was in the car with someone, possibly her ex, and left willingly, though that seems unlikely given that she was never seen or heard from again. Sierra was already dead, incapacitated, and someone was moving the car to dispose of evidence or create a false trail. If her ex wasn't involved, then who was driving her car? Now, there's another angle that's been bothering people. If the ex is so obvious, why hasn't he been arrested? Could it be that the police have something that rules him out? Maybe they have some kind of alibi or evidence that we don't know about. But if that's the case, why haven't they said anything? This isn't a random case. Investigators themselves have admitted it was orchestrated and very well planned. So why the silence? And then there's the strangest part of this whole timeline. Sierra dropping off things at her ex's apartment at 4:30 a.m. That alone is weird. Why would she choose to meet an ex at that time? Did she work late and it was the only time she could come by? Was she helping someone else, picking up a drunk friend, meeting someone new? There's also a rumor that she was seen near a bar few hours later. If that's true, then why? Was she meeting someone new? Could her ex have followed her there, gotten jealous? And there's another huge red flag. Sierra had a nice car, her family was actively looking for her, and yet her ex hasn't ever been named publicly. Why? Normally, in cases like this, even if someone isn't a suspect, their name comes up somewhere. But in this case, nothing. Could it be that he's a cop or someone with connections to law enforcement? Someone who would know how to avoid scrutiny. That would explain why he hasn't been officially named and why he hasn't been forced to come in for an interview. Another thing to consider is Sierra's size. She was 5'4" and about 123 lbs. If she was attacked, she would have been at a distance advantage against a man. Even an average sized male would have at least 5 inches and 40 pounds on her. If something violent happened, it's unlikely she would have been able to fight back successfully, especially if she was caught off guard. Then there's the timing issue. Sierra's car was last seen leaving at 4:30 a.m., but we don't know exactly when she arrived at the apartment. Did she show up just before that? Had she been there for hours? And if she left, why didn't she go home? And finally, the biggest mystery of all: how did her car end up in Middleton, 20 miles away? If the boyfriend had to go to work, could he have arranged for someone to move the car? If so, who and why? At the end of the day, the most frustrating part of this case is there's so much that doesn't add up, and yet no one has been arrested. The lack of a normal suspect or even a person of interest is incredibly unusual in a case where investigators had already admitted that Sierra's disappearance wasn't random. From my extensive research on the case, the most interesting and important detail is when we start looking at the logistics of how Sierra's car got to Jewel Avenue in Middleton. First off, Middletown isn't exactly close to Trotwood. If someone dumped her car there, they would have needed a ride back. There is no public transportation connecting the two cities, meaning whoever did this either knew someone in Middleton or had someone come pick them up. That's a huge clue. Trotwood to Middleton is about a 30-minute drive via which 4 or a bit longer taking I-75, depending on the time of the day. That's not an accidental trip. If Sierra's killer or whoever moved the car was trying to make it seem like she had gone somewhere voluntarily, it's not the most random location. But it's also not somewhere you just stumble upon. Whoever left the car there had a reason for choosing Middleton, whether it was the familiarity with the area or simply a place where they felt they could abandon the car without drawing attention. Now let's talk about Jewel Avenue itself. It's a primary residential street with some older houses that had been split into apartments and duplexes. That means the area isn't deserted, and yet the car was left there without anyone seeing who dropped it off. Did they abandon it at late night or in the early morning hours, when people were less likely to be outside? What's also worth noting is that Jewel Avenue isn't far from a park, one apparently that has a reputation for unseemly activities. Now, while that doesn't necessarily mean anything violent happens there, it does make you wonder, was the car placed there because it was the kind of area where no one asks questions? Or was it more about convenience? Another interesting factor: from Thanksgiving through New Year's, Middletown has a holiday event called Light Up Middletown, which draws a lot of people into the area. That means extra traffic, more people moving in and out, and less chance of someone noticing a car being abandoned. While the event ends at 11 pm, we don't actually know what time the vehicle was left there. It's possible it was dropped off earlier than 4:30 am and no one noticed because there were so many other cars in the area during the holidays. And then there's the Uber factor. While there's no public transit, someone could have taken an Uber from Middletown back to Trotwood, or at least part of the way. The closest cluster of restaurants on Verity Parkway would be an ideal place for someone to call a rideshare without looking suspicious. Could law enforcement check rideshare records to see if any unusual pickups happened that night? The lack of detail about how Sierra's car ended up in Middletown is frustrating because it raises so many more questions. Whoever moved the car had a way to get back. Who helped them? Why choose Middletown? Did the person know the area, or did they think it was random enough to throw off the investigation? Did the person who abandoned the car expect it to be found quickly, or were they hoping it would sit there longer? These are all unanswered questions. There are definitely some gaps in the information, and it makes you wonder, are investigators intentionally holding back details? If so, it could mean they have leads and they aren't ready to share yet. Hopefully, that's the case. I've gone through every article available, and none explicitly mention whether the investigators obtained Sierra's call logs, text messages, or location data. However, given the involvement of both local detectives and the FBI, it's highly likely that they secured her phone records and used cell tower data to track her last known movements. Sierra's cell phone was reportedly found inside the car, either in her purse or very close to it, but not in the trunk. This detail is significant. It suggests her phone was left behind intentionally rather than discarded separately, which could indicate that she never voluntarily left the car. Investigators likely conducted a digital forensic analysis of her phone to uncover any recent calls, messages, or activity leading up to her disappearance. However, modern smartphones come with strong encryption and security features, making it difficult, sometimes impossible, to bypass a lock screen and access private data. If law enforcement was successful, her phone could hold crucial evidence. But if they weren't, some key details about her final hours may still be locked away. The bigger question remains, if detectives did recover useful data, why hasn't more information been released? Are they building a case behind the scenes? Or did her phone reveal less than what they had hoped? Right now, a 10,000 reward is being offered for any information that could lead to Cierra Chapman's recovery and identification, arrest, and conviction of the person or people responsible for her disappearance. Cierra Chapman was 30 years old when she vanished, meaning she would be around 32 years old today. She is a black woman standing 5'4" and 5'5", 162 to 165 centimeter, and weighing 123 lbs, 56 kg. She has brown hair and brown eyes and has two tattoos, one on her neck that reads Jaden and another on her chest. When she was last seen, she was wearing a short-sleeved yellow Tommy Hilfiger t-shirt, blue jeans, black boots, and possibly a green jacket with a fur-trimmed hood. If you have any information about Sierra's whereabouts, please contact the Dayton Police Department. Even the smallest detail could help bring answers to her family. And thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe to my podcast on Spotify and YouTube so you never miss an update. I appreciate you joining me today. Have an amazing weekend ahead. Until then, stay safe, crime enthusiasts.